here's my light fastest of paper chart where I took a lot of different kinds of paper, protected half of it, exposed that to the sun for 3-4 weeks, and then uncovered the protected part to see how much the paper would fade, which is a good test for its permanence. So we're talking about paper for dry pastels here. There's a lot of options. These are all pretty much ready to go, and you'll see some are more light fast than others. Like the brown paper bag at the top left is more light fast than some of these Strathmore colors. So I like the Strathmore surface, but it's going to fade. The Canson did much better. It's actually very light fast, stayed much more the same color. When you're looking for pastel papers, you'll notice that some are very expensive, and those are the sanded pastel papers. So what I wanted to do in this video is show you how to make your own sanded pastel paper for much less expense than what they're selling it to you for. So here's some colors these are all pretty good. A lot of times I'll do a demonstration on just basically brown paper bag color, which comes in a large roll that I like to keep in the classroom. So we're not there, so I want to show you how to make sanded pastel paper. And again, some of these other colors of paper, if you like them, they're all fine, but let's talk about the sanded. So here's the sanded pastel paper I made, and here's what I made it with. So the paper I put it on is like a Bristol paper, and I mixed the gesso, acrylic gesso, and acrylic raw umber. If you don't have acrylic gesso and you want to do this with just regular acrylic paint, you can, but the gesso has a little chalk in it, so it makes it a little more of a matte, toothy surface, which is what we want to end up with, so I thought it was a little bit better, so that's why I used that. And the value is a little bit lighter than a mid-tone gray, kind of like the N6 up there. I just put a little dot on there to see how it dries down. So golden acrylic makes a set of neutral grays. The N6 and N7 are both lighter than middle gray. I want it to dry down about like N6, so here's how I'm testing it. I like the color of raw umber mixed with white. It's a little bit warm, but not too warm. If you want something warmer, feel free to use another color. I like the way of making paper like this because it allows me to control exactly what color the paper is going to be and choose something that's very light fast. You see on that tube it said light fastness 1. It means it's not going to fade. It's a very permanent color. So I like knowing that the paper is going to stay the same color for a long time, and I get to choose exactly what color and value that I want on the paper. Whereas with the store-bought ones, you kind of have to go with what they have existing already. Once you've mixed up a color you like in acrylic, we can go ahead and put it on the paper. You want to apply a lot of thin coats rather than a thick coat. So let me show you that. So not too much paint on the brush, just a little bit on the end. Maybe that's even a little bit much. You don't want to scoop it in there and get a whole bunch of paint on there because the acrylic will get streaks in it that may dry down to little ridges that you don't want to have to try to sand out on your paper. So just a little bit on the end is easier to control. So now I'm just brushing the paint onto the paper, trying to keep the whole thing wet and smoothing it down. You notice I go over it once it starts to dry and 90 degrees from the last direction that I put the color on there. So that helps it dry down nice and quiet, which is what you want. Once you have your paper the color you want it, you put a coat of either this golden pastel ground or fine pumice gel. Either one will give it the tooth of the sanded paper, which is, you can see the price of a jar of this is $12.38. But you can prep so many sheets with this that it will save you money in the long run. So when it goes on, it's not going to be this milky, but since it's acrylic based, it'll be slightly chalky and dry to more transparent. And again, this is for dry pastels. That's why they like the sanded paper, to give it a little tooth. And the toothy sanded surface helps make it easier for you to build and layer and blend. Here's a drawing on that paper, which I think is a good sort of ground for flesh tones, so it sets them off well. Here's a couple more drawings. So anyway, you're not obliged to do this, but if you wanted to buy the more expensive paper, this is a way that gives you much more control and you can have the same result for all its expense long term.